Your line is now muted.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it is that time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the REScheck webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be sent out to all attendees. If there are any issues with audio, please write in the chat, which can be generated on your screen by hovering over the bottom of your WebEx window and clicking on that chat button. My name is Erica DeLello, and I'm a project manager for REScheck. We've been working with the Colorado Energy Office to provide trainings just like this one. If your jurisdiction or company is in Colorado and has an interest in presentation or technical assistance for code adoption, feel free to reach out to me. We have another few webinars coming up on what we can expect from IACC 2021, ComCheck, and advanced framing methods. I will be sending you a short survey at the end of the presentation. If you could please take the time to answer these questions, it will help on it to continue to improve on these. Also, I will be muting everyone's lines to reduce background noise. We want to encourage questions, so either please use the chat function throughout, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask a question throughout the duration of this presentation. Our presenter today is Gil Ross Miller, and I'll let him take the lead.
Excellent. Thanks, Erica. And so here, this is Gil, for those of you that don't know me. Gil Ross Miller, Colorado Code Consulting. Started my construction career back there in 1975, so I've been around the block a couple of times. Served on the IRC Plumbing and Mechanical Code Development Committee for the 9 and the 12. I was on Commercial Energy Code Development Committee for the 15 and the 18. Just got off, and here it's been months now. The Residential Energy Code Development Committee for the 21. Those have now actually, the online voting for all the B codes have been officially approved. And so those are on the ICC website if you want to go visit there and download what the official results were. And that was building official there in Parkville, Colorado for, I don't know, it's like 13 years, so quite a while. So pretty open forum here. First hour or so, we're going to look at a few slides, kind of talk about REScheck, how it works, the pros and the cons, certainly give you my 10 cents worth on how it works and what I think it does and doesn't do. And there's going to be plenty of times when I might say something that seems completely outrageous and totally unbelievable, but either I'm lying straight to you, or I'm trying to get you to think, or it's true. So don't hesitate. Please ask, type in if you feel more comfortable typing questions in. I can see those here. Or just, like I say, unmute yourself and ask. If I start to go by a piece that you're like, whoa, wait a second, you talked a little too fast on that bit. That would be wonderful if you could do that. Okay, so next thing here is that we all know that the code's nothing but black and white. And as many of you know, I'm relatively opinionated. So don't run home and say, well, Gil said. And otherwise, it's the HJ. Most of you know that. That's nothing critical. So ask questions, and so we're going to get into a little bit of basics here. Okay. So first thing we need to realize is what's the definition. Okay. So many of us has been through this, and sometimes it can be a little bit goofy. Commercially, we've actually got something in there now in the commercial piece that makes it a little bit more clear. But for right now, we're dealing with anything that's 3 stories or less above grade plane. It's either an R2, an R3, or an R4. And so on the left there, we have a picture of what I'm going to call a 3-story building. And we're going to make the grand assumption it's R2s. So that would be an excellent example of a building that we would use a residential energy code on, and we would use the REScheck. Then we have these buildings on the right where it gets a little bit confusing, okay? So that's a really good picture. So we need to look at that for a second and know that the first floor pretty much looks like retail, yes? I mean, we'll just make that grand assumption that that's the case. It looks like retail shops, maybe a coffee shop of some sort. And then we got to decide, well, what are the upper two floors? So the upper two floors, I don't know, could be an R2. So if it was an R2, let's just make the assumption that it's an R2 for fun. If it was an R2, we would run two different energy compliance on this particular piece. We would run a commercial piece for the lower floor because it's not an R2, an R3, and R4, okay? But because it's a three-story building, right, 3 stories above grade plane, the upper 2 floors we would do with REScheck. And in the second hour, we'll actually go into the online software, and we'll actually do a REScheck on a really simple house. And I'll show you the example, an example that I've created on how you do that. How do you run a comm check when there's no ceiling, which is what this would be, or how do you do a REScheck when there's no floor? Okay? Because we're looking at the, quote, building's thermal envelope. So those of you that have been looking at that picture, you're going to tell me, well, it's not an R2, Gil, because the sign on the right-hand side says hotel. Well, if it's a hotel, it's an R1. And if it's an R1 on the second 2 floors, guess what? It's all a commercial building. And so deciding, you know, what the occupancy is and how it's going to be used, for all I know, it's just a cool little picture, and it's not a hotel anymore, and it's all an R2 because, you know, the sign was cool and they left it up. So we just have to figure out what it is. So that's where we'd be with residential and a combination. And so we've got several different things that we can deal with, a lot of different tools per se to work with. Prescriptive, as we've discussed in the past, is, hey, do what the book says, do what the tables say, move on with life. We don't have to do a trade-off. We don't have to do any performance. We don't have to do anything, okay? The only test that we have to do prescriptively, residentially, would be a blower door test, regardless of the path. Of course, all the mandatory things. And the only other test would be a duct tightness test, if you happen to have ducts outside your thermal envelope. Then we get into what the REScheck software does. And it's a trade-off. And unlike the commercial side, like the commercial side, the only thing that we're trading off is the building's thermal envelope. Whenever we're doing a performance or any kind of a trade-off or energy analysis path, as the third one here says, we're always comparing it back to a prescriptive house. Always going back to the prescriptive tables, the UA table specifically, all compared to that. If you can build it however it is you want, as long as you can either trade it off in REScheck, which is what we're looking at today, or which we're not going to get into today, the performance path and or the ERI method, which we won't be getting into today. Okay? So REScheck is free. You don't have to buy it. You don't, no money, no nothing. You can go on there and download it. The thing that's new for 2018 is that the desktop version, so you can get it for desktop, only in Windows though. If you've got a Mac, a computer, you won't be able to download it. They don't make Mac stuff anymore. If you want to do the 2018 IECC, you have to use REScheck Web. The desktop version doesn't have it. Probably some sort of money-saving thing that PNNL is doing. Not really certain the reasoning behind it. But the REScheck Web, which is what we'll look at today, has a slightly different format look to it, but still works exactly the same way. Not an issue. So go there, go to the REScheck site, and download the desktop version if you're still on the versions, because the desktop version will have everything from the 2000, the 9, the 12, and the 15. That's what the desktop will have. If you're on any one of those versions, you should be good. Now, if you're on the 18, you're going to need to use the web version. So this is just quick screenshots showing you what it looks like. We'll be using the REScheck web piece today, so you'll get very familiar with what that looks like. Go through the different pieces and what you select and what you have to have and don't have. And on the left-hand side, that's just a screenshot, which we'll see several screenshots today here in the first hour of the desktop version. So we're going to kind of go through how folks do it. So I'm of the opinion that it's just as important for those of us that are doing the reviews on this, that you have at least a clue on how the software works, okay? Because the software isn't a human being, right? And it's not going to tell you if there's been a mistake made. It has no clue if the building I'm doing is actually 10,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, just as an example, right? We have to know what's going on. We have to know that they actually entered the right assembly within the software and know what the software meant by it. We're going to show you the help piece of it so that, you might describe a particular construction type or an assembly one way, and REScheck has got a different definition or looks at it or makes the assumption that certain pieces are in it, okay? So we'll kind of try to get to that and show you where the help piece is for that. So here, this is just I'll show you how this works today. You're able in REScheck to actually do a pretty neat job of sharing these with your designers. And so if I'm the architect and happen to be putting this together and you need your person that's designing the HVAC doing the manual J or doing maybe the plumbing or whatever it might be, they can then see what you've entered into the REScheck, okay? They can see what you entered for the walls in your thermal envelope and did you trade anything on. 9 times out of 10, it's the slab on grade stuff in residential type projects. So, they can see so that we can get apples to apples. We're going to give you some examples today when we go online, and I show you the takeoff that we're doing, how square footages, I'm not worried about minor differences because we'll all do a takeoff, and I'll show you today how that works, how many of us will do it. And we may not come up with the exact same square footage. What I'm looking for when I do square footage reviews is I'm looking for the fact that they missed the second floor, right? So it's like, well, this is a 2-story building, and it looks like you're about 1,000 square feet short of exterior wall here. It seems like you may have missed something. So somebody have a question? Just got a little background noise there. No? Okay. So here, what we're able to do is share projects. So these are just projects I just have created there, and you'll see those today. And then in that other tab where it says Shared Project Requests, I would go there to show a project that somebody has shared with me. So they can log in and set their own REScheck account up, and then you can just share it between accounts. And so that really helps to keep things coordinated, and it's there, it's electronic, they can download it and see everything. So it's really nice. ComCheck does that, but it's not nearly as clean, I don't think, as the web, REScheck web is. So we're just going to, you take a few quick little steps here. We're selecting the appropriate code. We'll show you how that's done. We've got to enter the right project information, the address and things of that nature. Making sure all the building components are correct because we're just dealing with the thermal envelope. We're going to talk about the mechanical piece and why that's optional. Okay? And then we've got the different requirements tab. So there's a really, really nice checklist that the REScheck and ComCheck both print out. Okay? They're fairly generic. They're not particularly project specific, but as you can see when we go online here, the designer can now go through each one of those pieces and say, well, yeah, this is a project, and yes, we're going to do this, and here's where it is on, sheet A3 detail 2. They can add those notes to it. Many of them don't. It would be nice if they did. But you also have now a checklist for review and inspections, field inspections. So it kind of ends up being a nice little checklist for you. So when you first, open it up, this happens to be a desktop shot. When you very first open it up, it just says, hey, you're currently set to whatever code it was. Looks like it was 09 at this point when I did it. And it just says, oh, well, look up your code. Now, when you click on look up your code, it will give you a map of the states and try to tell you what the state has adopted throughout the United States. And if you have a state code, that would work. But in Colorado, we've got too many jurisdictions, and each one's doing their own. So you just really need to go to the jurisdiction's website and see if they've done it. Another word to the wise: if that jurisdiction has amended the energy code, meaning they have allowed different R values or U values, as an example, for exterior walls, REScheck won't know that, okay? They won't know that because they're going to keep comparing it to, as an example, a 2018 house, 2018 prescriptive house. And so they may have reduced the R values in the walls, and they certainly can do that, but it's not going to be easy to use REScheck to show compliance. I know that Denver, what's that? No, okay. I know that Denver is actually working with PNNL or with the energy office to get Denver. So you can pick Denver. When you do the drop down, you'll see that. You'll see Denver. So that would be an exception to it. Okay.
Hey, Gil, before you continue,
yes.
Can everyone make sure they're muted on their end as well? We're getting a little feedback, so I just want to make sure we don't create that distraction.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you just want to double check, hopefully you've got the ability to mute. If not, it'll be tough to cover up a receiver or something, or take yourself off a speaker. Sometimes that speaker mic can pick up an awful lot of stuff like we're hearing now. So we've got kids screaming in the background. We know who you are, I think, or at least you know who it is. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So project information, honestly, city and the county, and what we're picking for a project type, because we can do, several different projects. We can do single family, we can do multifamily, and we can do additions and alterations. We'll talk about each one of those. Project details is optional a lot. It's nice to know, who the designer was and who did the report and who the contractor is and who the builder is, and we've got fields to fill all that stuff out. But you can do that. As far as multifamily is concerned, you could do one REScheck for each unit type, but that would be unusual. I don't know why one would do that. I think it would be behooved and you just do the entire building, because we're just looking at the thermal envelope. If you end up doing individual units, you might have individual units that only have one wall that is part of the thermal envelope. When it's a 3-story building and you've got one in the middle, right, you're going to have one wall. Everything else is going to be is next to conditioned space. So I think that would be tough, and not. I wouldn't advise it personally. So multifamily, yes, we kind of went through that already. We're going to go ahead and skip that. Examples, apartments, condos, townhouses, dorms, It might get into an R2, row houses, which is, townhouses. Condos, there's really no definition for a condo. The pictures we're looking at here, either one of those could be a condo. It's built like a townhouse, but we're going to call it a townhouse, not a condo, because we don't have anything in the building code that talks about condos. That's an ownership deal. We're looking at how it's built. I mean, you can have apartment buildings, R2s, all stacked on top of each other, and they could be condominiumized, right? Well, for us, it's still an R2 and still residential, and that's how we do the energy code. I'm not going to deal with that. So we've got a quick screenshot here from the PC or the downloadable piece. So you get, picking out your project. We've got several different tabs here. What we're looking at is the different pieces that we're looking at. So we've, pressed the button here that says new construction. We say it's 1 and 2 family. Then we get to make some choices here. Are all the ducts inside? We'll do that later. Do we have a thermally isolated sunroom? Do we have any pools? Do we have any wood-burning fireplaces? We would have our option now of then putting in what our conditioned floor area is. Okay? Then we get into, let's say we pick an addition. Let's say that we pick the button here that says addition. Well, you get kind of the same questions here because it is going to be just like new construction. Yes? Yeah. So everything that we put in an addition is going to be just as we're building it new. So the software doesn't look at it any different. You could actually do, the code allows, if you're putting on an addition, you could run it both ways. You could run the whole place with the addition, or you can run the REScheck just with the addition. Many additions I see are all prescriptive, and they don't use the trade-off, so we don't normally see a REScheck for that. Kind of same goes for alterations. And what you get here, a little pop-up that comes up, and it gives you the definition of what they're calling an alteration. Okay, so it talks about model, remodel, retrofit, or renovation. Software input should include only those envelope assemblies and mechanical systems equipment, if that's what you're doing. That's part of the altered project. Yeah, so anytime we're doing a trade-off, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Anytime you're doing a mechanical system, so the only time that you're going to do mechanical in here is if you choose the performance path. Okay, that's going to be in the options, and we'll show you where that is. And I think I've got a slide on that. I think that's the next one. So we'll just go. So anytime you're doing, even if you're doing a performance, you're never going to be able to trade off efficiency on equipment. So for instance, even though the federal minimum is 80%, you're not going to get the reference house, which is the code house, with an 80% furnace and gain points or anything, because now I'm putting in a 98%er in the house I'm building. If I'm building a 98%er and that's what I'm putting in my house that I'm building, that's what you're going to be compared to. It's going to be a 98%er in the reference house. So that changed several code cycles ago that you get. So here's this. So when you do a little drop down, you get the compliance method, okay? You see it's at the top of the screen. So how am I in appliance? Is it the UA trade-off, which is what this is for? Or they give you this performance alternative. This is not, this is Gil's very opinion, this is not the performance path. There are those that might tell you that it is, but it's not. Not only do you not see the background, you don't know what it's doing. Whenever we're doing the performance path, and when I say performance, I mean performance, that's the cost for heating, cooling, and domestic water heating, okay? I have no idea what this is doing because I don't get a report that shows me what did I use for my reference house and what did I do with my as-built house. I'm assuming here, as far as air changes per hour, my ACH 50, they're using 3 ACH 50 if I'm doing climate zone 5, for instance. Well, what did they do in the end? Do I have to do a blower door test in the end? Well, yeah, but what happens when it's better? What happens if it's worse? Okay, we don't know that. So you can read what it says here. This happens to be the 2015. We can look in the 18 here if we remember to do it when we get online. It's based on the simulated for your proposed building compared to the equivalent code building. And it says both buildings are on proposed mechanical efficiency that you enter, but it's going to be the same. Personally, I would not accept a REScheck if they're using performance. Wouldn't do it. It's not the performance path. For those that would disagree, we could certainly have that conversation. But I don't use it for that. And I know if Shauna were doing this, I think she would be saying the same exact thing. So personally, I wouldn't take it. But I don't know that I've ever seen anyone try to do it. Okay? So you keep seeing this little help thing here, right? Or press F1 for additional information. Well, if you press the F1, it actually takes you into this REScheck help, which is awesome. The desktop version, I think, works better than the online one. The online one, I don't think is near as robust. You can find it, but it's not simple. The one in the desktop one works exceptionally well. But here's where they describe what they mean by a ceiling and skylights and walls and windows. And here I just happen to bring up, compliance methods, and it goes through and gives you their definition about what it is. And so that's kind of key. So if there's ever really a question about, well, how I see what they did on the plans and that assembly, but is that really what REScheck is doing in the background? This is where you find out. It's an exceptionally decent. I use it all the time. I go back, I forget. I go back and look. Just look it up and see what it is. So I go back to that. A lot of the times I say it all the time. Go back to the definitions. Many times the answer to your question is in the definition. So here is the definitions for all the different inputs and how they look at it. So we're looking at the building thermal envelope. So we take a look at this plan here to see what's kind of going on. And so we have to really have a really good idea of what's inside and what's outside. So if I were to look at this set of plans, I could start to make a guess, especially if they paid attention about where they were putting the little squiggly lines, showing the insulation. So it looks like, I don't know what, I'm not sure what this space is here on the lower right hand. It's kind of showing at the rim. Yes. Oh,
looks like your screen might be stuck.
Oh, yeah, look. I'm not seeing Gil. Well, so is nobody seeing my stuff yet?
We see the alteration general requirements.
So you're 2 slides back. Don't know what to do.
Would you maybe try on sharing and then resharing? That might.
Okay, let me do that. You'll have to tell me how to do that. I do the little pop-up and it just says, do you want to share? And I'll hit screen again. And I'll hit screen 2. Okay. All right. Did it do anything?
Might still be loading.
Sorry, folk.
Bear with us here. Can people in the chat acknowledge whether or not they can see Gil's screen?
Blank screen, blank screen. Blank right now. Oh my goodness sakes, folk. Well, let me escape. try the...
Okay.
All right. Does anybody see anything yet? Could be a lady running. No?
Yeah.
All right.
Wait, no, I think I can see your screen now. Yeah, it's your desktop background right now.
Got it. Okay. Is that what people see?
Looks like it.
Yep, background. Check. Well, let's try this and let's see if we get it again.
All right.
Should be the house.
Yeah, we're not seeing that. Just trying to think, maybe if I had this presentation, it might work better on my end. I'm just trying to...
What a drag.
Oh, wait, I see your screen.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we see a house.
There you go. Oh, you gotta love it. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna delicately go back one slide. All right. So hopefully we can see the same thing I'm seeing now. And in this lower right-hand corner, we see that now, Erica?
We still see the house.
Well, it was a different picture of the house. Oh, for crying out loud.
Yeah, we see a section view.
Yeah. So at the very top of the page, it says a building thermal envelope.
No, we do not see that. Hey, Shauna, I think you're on the line. If you wouldn't mind sharing the presentation with me.
Well, it says not, she doesn't have it. I'm going to have to email it to you.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on with bandwidth here. Sorry, everyone.
Well, I can try to change what I'm connected to, if that might help. All right. Folks, give us 10 minutes here. We're going to get this figured out. Well, first I'm going to hit stop sharing and give it back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, well, we can make an attempt.
Okay. Well, go ahead and give it a try. I did just receive your PowerPoint, so if it does happen again, I'll just switch it over to mine and I'll follow along.
10-4, good buddy. All right. Well, yeah, in theory, Gil's connected once again. So we'll try. So again, once we're looking at a set of plans, we need to figure out, can we know what the thermal envelope is or not? Are the plans clear enough? Here I'm looking at this lower right-hand corner here, and it looks to be part of the basement. Not really sure what these little scribbly lines are supposed to be. If this is actually, a drape, it's certainly not labeled. One would assume, because we don't have the floor insulated. We've got the rim, but verification would be good. we've got this 4-car garage, which is awesome, but it looks like the wall's insulated, but the ceiling's not. So is that something the draftsman just put in there, or did they forget to put it in there? Was the garage going to be heated or not? Those are the questions I'd have there. I just changed slides.
Yep.
Okay. Here we're looking at that same house, and we're getting that same indication that might be maybe an unconditioned space or condition, but of course it now double confuses it because we now see the insulation here separated from the basement and nothing in the floor. And so again, we're still not real clear what's happening for this particular space. Maybe the floor plan will tell us. Perhaps they actually created, a plan that had the little red line or, some sort of an indication that says this is my, quote, thermal envelope as the code requires. 9 times out of 10, I don't have issues trying to figure out what's in and what's out. But when there's conflicting drawings like this, I will absolutely, on plan review, make the call. It's like, can you tell me what's going on in here? What's happening with this particular space? The envelope, when we're making entries, we don't have to use everything. We may not have everything. For like a skylight, for instance, we may not have any skylights at all. You don't have to separate everything out, meaning that if all the walls and all the windows and all the doors can be all in the same group. We'll do that when we hopefully, Gil has the ability to go online and see my screen at the same time, which might be a task. So you can group those together. Gross area is everything except slab on grade. Slab on grade is always done linear footage. And when we do our example, we'll do that. So we've got other assemblies too. Yeah, the area of the band joist, it's a good point, is going to be with the upper walls. So I have a tendency to look at it saying, okay, the extra square footage for the walls or the box sills, the rims, will be included in the wall that's sitting on it. So if it's a one-story building, I would include it with the first floor walls. If it's a two-story building, I'd include the second floor rim with the second floor walls. That's how I would do it. Then we get to this other assembly. Now, other is an assembly that they don't want to use REScheck. REScheck is going to have built-in R values for the entire assembly except what we end up putting in. And so you can see here on the lower part of that screen, there was a place to fill in what's the cavity insulation and what the continuous insulation is. Well, the software already knows that it might be a wood-framed wall, okay? Well, that wood-framed wall is going to have a lot of stuff, isn't it? It's going to have studs, it's going to have sheetrock, it's going to have plywood, it's going to have it's going to have all kinds of things in it. All the software wants to know is what am I putting in cavity, and am I putting any continuous insulation, or one or the other, or both. When they pick that, they need to send you a calculation. I just changed screens.
You're good.
Yep. Perfect. Good. Thank you. So this is just a really simple example of just a 2x4 wall. And you may not see this particular type of a picture, but you will see something like you see on the right-hand side. You're going to see the calculation based on what the R value is at the insulation, especially if there's cavity, and what the R value would be at the stud. And so you can add R values. You cannot add U values, okay? And so when we look at this, we're just going down through the assembly. So we've got what we call there's air films on the inside and the outside, and they do have an R value. This is all based off the ASHRAE Book of Fundamentals. This is something that's been around for many years, many studies. So depending on your weather, that might change a little bit. But when you look in the Ashley Book of Fundamentals, it tells you 0.17 for the outside and 0.68 for the inside. That's pretty typical. So that's what you'll see for these, quote, air films. Then we just kind of go down the rows here. So we got a piece of half-inch wood. We're saying it's about a 0.81. I threw in a half-inch insulating board in there for fun. So it's got a little over 3. Then we get to the bat itself. Yeah. So where the bat insulation is going to be, that's going to be an R13. But where the stud is, there is no insulation. There is no bat insulation, so that's just the R value of the stud. In this case, a little over 4. Then we've got gypsum. Well, that's continuous over the stud. And then, of course, we've got our inside air film. And so we add those together. You know, we've got a little bit over an R18 where insulation is at, but it's a little over an R10 where the stud happens to be. So now we have to calculate what our, quote, framing factor might be. I use 20%. 20% is probably pretty close to advanced framing pieces, but that's going to be something that the engineer that's putting this calc together for you or the designer will have to let you know, and you have to see if that's fairly realistic or not. Then it's just math. And so now we're just saying 80% of our wall is at a little over R18, so we got 0.8 times that. And then we add to that because 20% of our wall is wood. And so it's only an R10. And so we add those together, and so we have this, quote, overall combined R value, a little just short of R17. And U values and R values are reciprocal of each other. So 1 divided by the R value gives you the U value, and 1 divided by the U value gives you the R value. So we do the math here, and we end up with a U value of 0.059. So the only reason that designers would do this is if the defaults for all of the other things, the air films, the sheathing, the gypsum board, are built into REScheck, they think, well, ours is better. Well, we're actually using stucco instead of wood, so we get a little bit better R value. We're actually doing a full brick veneer, perhaps, and that is going to be tough to use only because there's an airspace between the two. Yes. So if they're saying they're using their brick as part of the insulating, I don't know. We've got that airspace in there, unless it's we don't have that in the residential piece yet. There is a space for airspace in the commercial piece, but it would not be the space behind the brick. You could not count that as an R value. So if you see somebody using brick veneer as a part of their wall assembly and gives it an R value, it would be wrong because airspace kills it. You got an airspace between it's supposed to be vented. All right, just changed screens. Here, just outlining the fact that we're using U-vectors and solar heat gains for windows. We got cavity and just continuous type insulation. We've got, once you get everything in, the REScheck's pretty good. If it's red, there's something that's red in the fields that we've entered into, it's not right. Yeah, there's something wrong. Then you're going to have to hit compliance, and it'll tell you what your total UA is, and it's big red if it says fail. It says fail. Here, right, we're just looking for the NFRC labels and for residential type projects. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see a sticker for 99% of them. You might have a few of the bigger custom homes that won't have a sticker. They might actually have and use storefront assemblies like you would see in a commercial project. But they can certainly do that. But that's when we're getting into the NFRC CMAS and the CMA procedure to do that. So you would treat it just like you would commercial, because same rule in residential requirements. It's got to have an NFRC listing. So if it doesn't have a sticker, they're going to have that CMA compliance piece, which we'll get into more when we do ComCheck and look at windows. Cavity versus continuous. I think we've got pretty good handle on that. Cavity is defined now in the 2018 as insulation placed between framing members. Okay? So anything that's in between the framing member. Then we've got something on the right-hand side that's, continuous and looks like it's got some furring strips over it. But it's continuous across the face. This happened to be the interior or the exterior of the framing member, so we don't get that thermal bypass. That's what it's all about. Just change the slide again a couple times, just let me know. Basement with foundations. We've got a few things that we're dealing with. We've got, is the basement conditioned or not? The floor, is it separated, from our unconditioned space? And then we've got crawl spaces. Hopefully most folks these days are actually doing what we're calling the code talks about an unvented crawl space, but clearly it's vented. It's just not vented to the outside. Okay? 9 times out of 10, we're insulating the crawl walls, and we're providing ventilation in there, either mechanically or conditioned air, something along that line. So hopefully we see most folks doing that. If they're not, they're insulating, then they got to insulate the floor. They have to separate it. That's going to be the thermal envelope. Basements, I don't see many basements that are unconditioned. They certainly could be, but it's certainly not something I see very often. Okay, so what's a basement wall? I think we've seen this slide before. I think this is something we got from PNNL. 50%. 50%. So if it's more than 50, it's greater than 50% below grade, it's basement, and if it's more than that, it's above. So what do we do with walkouts? I personally don't get too bent out of shape about this whole, we start to, come down here to see, at what point we are above and below grade. I'll usually just say 50-50. I'll just say 50% of this wall is below grade and 50% of that wall is above grade, and just do the math that way. That way we don't have to worry about. So obviously we have a walkout here. This is all being above grade. And the one on the side here, I'd just do the 50-50 piece. We're not going to see a tremendous difference between the two when we start to do the math. It's not going to make hill beams for the difference. It's not worth the brain damage, in my opinion. Not worth the brain damage to do that. Below grade basement. Got a question? No? Okay. Wall height, you actually have a little pop-up that'll come up that'll tell you about what that is. Top to bottom of the wall, yeah, right. It's not uniform, provide an average height. And that's why I said just do the 50-50. Then they're going to ask you what the depth is below grade and, from finish to the outside. Again, if it's sloped or uneven, just do 50-50, just an average piece. If you do 50-50 and just say it's all above grade or all below grade, it's much, much simpler to do. But it makes a difference. There was a time where you could get away with it just insulating half the wall. You can't do that much anymore. 9 times out of 10, they're insulating the entire height. Here, the requirement is it got to be at least 10 feet or as deep as tall as the wall is, but it doesn't have to be more than 10. Measure from the top of the wall to where the insulation stops, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the same height as the wall that I've seen. If you put in 0, it's going to assume you don't have anything. You're not going to have any insulation at all. Continuous insulation, the software assumes it's on the exterior, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be on the interior and still work. Cavity, if we're doing a basement wall and you say we've got cavity, it's furred out. It makes you assume you've furred it out and you've got insulation between the framing members itself. Basement walls, I think we're pretty familiar with what's going on there. We've got furred out stuff there on the left and a little bit of continuous, almost like a drainage mat on the outside. It's fascinating that drainage mat, a lot of those will have an R value. They actually publicize an R value to it. Depending on how do I want to phrase this? 9 times out of 10, we have a perimeter drain system around the bottom of these walls, and it's generally on the exterior. When those things are full of water, obviously the R value isn't much because there's no trapped air in it. But it drains away fairly quickly. It usually, unless you've got a really high water table, in which case you're probably not going to have a basement. It would have to be full of water all the night to have nothing. So I usually don't get too bent out of shape if they add that R value in because it's draining away. It's made to drain water away and drain itself. Here, just a quick shot of rim joists. Again, I will always include the rims with the walls that are sitting on top of them. And so in this particular case, if you've got a walkout wall, I'm just saying the walkout 9 foot. And if I've got a 9-foot ceiling on the main level and I've got 12-inch floor joists, I'm saying, okay, those walls are actually 10 feet tall because the rims are walls. Just like the attic knee walls, that is an exterior wall. If I've got an attic knee wall, it's an exterior wall. So if I've got R20 walls, I've got an R20 attic knee wall. That is an exterior wall and would be included in the calculation. Here's that screenshot that you would get saying what are the walls doing, what's the depth of insulation, what's the height of the entire wall, what's the height below grade. There you just say, hey, whatever it is, you've got, garden level type or type basement walls that are fairly easy. He's going to have 4 or 5 feet maybe below grade and, 4 feet and 4 feet, or if it's 10 foot seat, it's 5 and 5. So that's the screenshot that comes up, and that's pretty easy. It does that. And the same thing when you look at the side, you've got a stepped wall like that. I would just, again, do 50-50 and not get too bent out of shape about that. So crawl spaces, that's how they're going to be done. You're going to have insulation on the exterior of the wall. The rims are going to have on it. It looks like on this particular shot, they've got a nice sealed vapor retarder coming up and sealed against the foil-backed foam, I'm assuming that is. The nice thing is that foam, the sheet foam that's got that foil stuff on it is basically an ignition barrier, and as long as you're just entering that crawl space to maintain equipment, that is perfectly acceptable. Yeah, no vents in the exterior. You're going to have either mechanical ventilation or conditioned air. Same thing with crawl space walls. You get the same picture that pops up to take a piece of that. And these are all the desktop pieces. We're going to see similar stuff when we do the stuff online. Cross our fingers that we can do that. Just a quick example of what we're doing. So you might have some slab that is insulated or not insulated. So in this particular case, we're saying that entire wall in the back that's highlighted is exposed, less than 12 inches below grade. If that's the case, then you need to enter it into the REScheck, whether you're insulating it or not. Okay? You have to see it in REScheck because REScheck needs to know, did you insulate it or not? This is what you're trading off. So you need to put it in. So if they put it in and I say 0 insulation, perfect. You need to put it in there so that it can calculate the fact that now I need to put more insulation or better windows someplace else to, quote, trade off the fact that I'm not doing something that's required. Again, you get this great little picture that pops up. It says, what are we doing? Okay, it's a floor, clearly. So we're just picking the type of floor where we're saying, hey, it's a slab on grade. Now we need to know, because the insulation requirements are different than if it's an unheated slab or a heated slab. And they mean, is it got in-floor radiant heat in it? So there's actually heat within the floor itself. The floor is obviously, is going to be heated somewhat just from the air that's in the conditioned space, but that's not what they mean. 9 times out of 10, it's unheated. And the picture on the right just shows that it always has to start at the top of the slab. It always has to top of the slab, and you can put it in any of these configurations. They're all code compliant. It all works. Okay? What you normally find is, of course, is the fact that it's not coming to the top of the slab. That's the bad part. They'll bring it to the bottom of the slab, and more power to them. You bring it to the bottom of the slab, I think that's great. But the REScheck's not going to give them any credit for it. You get no credit for it in the REScheck. If you were to insulate the entire slab underneath, even though it wasn't heated, code requires that when I'm heating the slab, you've got to have insulation underneath it. You're not going to see you get any credit for an unheated slab that's got insulation over the entire bottom of the slab. The whole slab's got insulation.
Gil, are you still there?
You got paper, Dan. You got paper, Dan.
It also sounds like someone isn't on mute, and Gil might have been dropped. Bear with us here.
Videos. Okay. That probably dates me. Okay, so if we didn't hear the knee wall conversation or I got cut off in the middle of it, clearly the step on the right doesn't work and we need to have air barriers on the attic side. It looks like they've got the step at least with the craft face facing the conditioned floor area. The other thing that we're going to be looking at when you start to look at how the report comes out, walls and the windows and doors are connected to the walls that they're in. Now, in this particular example, I've actually separated out all the different walls and actually given them a direction or an orientation. That's not, you don't have to do that. What you do have to do, though, is make sure that all the windows, and if they do it based on direction, that all the windows in the wall, the doors, are connected to the wall, and what you see here is what it looks like in the software. Got a wall 1, and then you add a window or a door, you get down to wall 2, and of course you go through the whole piece. And you'll see that in the report if they're connected. Again, if I don't want to do directions and I'm not doing the performance piece, I don't have to do orientation at all. I could have glommed all of these together like we're going to do in our example if we're able to do it. You got all the colors, right? Red, not good. Green, we're great. Does it only allow 4 walls? Oh, no. You can put in as many walls as you want. So look at what I've done with basement walls. In this particular example, I got 5. I got 5 basement walls in there because I've got 5 different construction types. So I've done it differently on the back because I got something else going on. And so you can do that depending on your wall configuration. And so, this is a spoiler for earlier. Remember when I said how do you do a 2-story or that 3-story building and the residential piece, the second and third floor, doesn't have a floor? Or how do you do the commercial and it doesn't have a ceiling? Well, that's the beauty of it. The software has absolutely no clue if you've drawn the entire building in there. We humans have to be smart enough to figure that out. And so if I get a REScheck and I don't see any floors, I'm like, well, what happened to the floor? because the software is just going to say, oh, you passed, based on what it is you enter into the software. It's just doing math. That's all it's doing. It's not saying, well, you only got one wall in here. You don't have four. Don't we usually have four directions on a house? Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe it's a triangle house. Now I've only got three sides. So the software has no clue whatsoever. And I could put in 30 wall types. If I've got 30 different types of wall construction, I can put in 30 different types of walls. Same with basement walls, same with roofs, same with floors. As many as they've got, they can put them in. That's a great question. That's a very good question. You can do that. Okay. Again, when you get blue, it's just like we can't calculate anything because you haven't entered any information. And so it does a pretty good job of saying, hey, you've made a mistake somewhere. It's just not, happening. Okay? And then you've got the bottom bar here. Did you pass? Did you fail? And how bad were you? And how bad was it? So that's the key there. It'll let you know, and that's the beauty of it. The beauty of these softwares is that once you've got all the information in there and it says fail, okay? Well, then you can go back and say, well, generally these are prescriptive houses. Okay, so it's comparing it to prescriptive house. Okay, so what have I put in there that isn't prescriptive? Like I haven't insulated the floors or the slab on grade, as an example. If I insulate it, does it make me pass? Or like I am not doing that detail, I'm not insulating my slab on grade. How much more insulation do I need to put in the attic? How much more insulation do I need to put in the walls? And then as a designer, they can just plug in the new numbers, hit to see if I comply, and then move on with life. It's a really, really quick way to do that, to see what's happening. Okay? And we can do that when we're fiddling around today. So hopefully, yeah. All right. I'm assuming you can see this slide, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Yeah, well, we're going to make a serious attempt here I know. So, can you now see?
So far, so good.
Okay. So you can see that I've already created a login. Okay. So we'll log in and see what happens. All right, so the screen loaded. Are we good?
Good.
Great. All right. So this is what I was showing you. So let's take a look right now at this two-story, no floor. And so you can see that I passed by 5.5% up here on the right. So Erica, just let me know if I'm talking and you can't see what I'm doing. I'll just assume you can until you tell me I can't. So here you can see, all right, we got energy code, Parker, it's new construction. I'm using my UA trade-off. I said in this particular case it was multifamily, just for fun, because that's what I was doing, yeah. I just threw in 30,000 square feet just for the heck of it. Then here are the questions I answered. Everything's varied. All the ducts are inside. I don't know if they're burning the insulation, but I don't have any sunrooms, pools, or wood-burning fireplaces. This is the other information. Owner, agent, designer, a contractor. Wouldn't that be nice if we saw that in there? Permit number and date, most times we're not going to have. And address, I just throw in the name here. So let's look at what I did in the envelope. And so right now, I'm just going to click on these and show you what we've done. And so in this particular case, we've got ceilings, yes, and I've got walls. And I just threw in ceilings and walls just to kind of show you that, well, number one, what do we got for walls? Well, let's see. So it looks like I put in some windows. So I clicked on that, and when we look at the report here, you'll see that. And so this building has no floor, but it passed by 5%, 5.5%. So the software has no clue. All you do is put in what's there, and it calculates it, and we move on with life. We, the reviewers, have got to be smart enough to know what's going on. Yes? Yeah. So that's how it works. And we won't take time to look at that right now. I need to go back to home, and we're going to create a new project. And so practice, we're going to do a drop down, and we're going to do the 2018. Sweet. And, oh yeah, this is where the wonderful Google whatever really gets in the way. What do we want to do? Parker, Minnesota. We're going to do Parker Prairie, Minnesota. How about that? We're going to say it's new construction. We're going to do the UA trade-off. We're going to fill that in here in a minute. We're just going to say everything's on the inside, and ducts aren't buried, and we don't have a wood-burning fireplace. We don't have any sunroom. We're not going to throw in an address. I'm just going to say anywhere, any spot. That'll be good. All right, and we're doing 1 and 2 families, so we'll just do a ranch house here to do that. I'm going to go ahead, and if I hit, I'm not going to hit save. That might take too long. It's really short. So we'd have to start entering some stuff. So let's see if the screen will change. And I'm assuming it's changed. So we should be looking at this really quick, simple place that we're going to do. We got some dimensions here, and hopefully, so we're looking at a basement. So what we're going to do is, those of you, I know you all have a calculator. I know you do. Okay? And so what are we going to do? Well, we need to know, number one, is it entirely below grade or not? Because it's not telling us, is it? Not going to tell us. It's not telling us that at all. And if you think that I'm joking about a plan that I got, this is a plan that I got. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Some are, let's say, more simple than others. Okay? So what we're going to say is you see this door here, we're going to make the assumption that it's a walkout. And we're going to make it simple for our class today. And we're just going to say this 21 feet here is the only 21 feet that we've got that's all above grade. And we're going to say it's all above grade. And it's the only place that we've got slab on grade. And we're just going to pretend everything else is below grade. Okay? So what do we got? So we've got, it says we've got an 8-foot ceiling height. That's R13 drape, and we're going to say that that wall is R20 just for fun. Okay, so what are we going to enter for that? So it's 21 feet long, and it's 8 feet tall, yes? It's 168 square feet. Anybody disagree? Type in there and say you did your math wrong. Then what else do we have? Well, then we're going to have what? We're going to have all the rest of that linear footage in R13 drape, because it said that much. Yeah, so we're going to have 12 plus 29 plus 18 plus 50 plus 30. Yeah, so that's 139 linear foot. We're going to take that times 8. Yes, times 8. 1,112. Anybody else get a different answer? Type it in if you did. What else do we need to know? Oh, we got windows, eh? So we got windows. So how many windows we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 windows.
All
Check.
4 by 4.
Yeah, all 4 by 4. So we got 16 times 4.
64 square feet of windows.
Okay, perfect. 64 square feet of window, and they're saying that it's a 0.35 U value with a solar heat gain coefficient of 0.4. Okay. We have a door. Yeah, we have a door, and it's got 0 stuff on it.
Dimensions.
Yeah. Well, let's just we're going to make the grand assumption it's a 3068, and we're going to call that 21 square feet. Close enough. And we're going to say it's a glass door. We're going to say it's more than 50% glass, and it's going to have to be the same as the windows. So we're going to say it's a 0.35 with a 0.40 solar heat gain coefficient. What else do we need to know about this basement?
Slab on grade.
Yeah, we just need to know that we've got 21 linear foot, okay, of slab on grade. Okay? Because we're just going to make the grand assumption that, although it's somewhat unrealistic, that we just got, 21 feet that's exposed. Usually we're going to have step downs and things of that nature, so it's not quite totally real. We got a little bit more than that. Anything else? Are we ready to enter the basement? Okay, so that's our basement. So we'll keep on this plan, and we're going to do the upper floor now. So I'm going to pull this down, and now we're looking at the first floor. Okay, so $168. Okay, so what do we got here? So basically, we've got one of the first floor. Says that we got R13 cavity in our flat ceiling and an R36 continuous. Okay, so how in the world is that? How's that working? Is that what you typically see on a REScheck? So we're going to say that these are trusses that are 24 inches on center, just for fun. So we got a 3.5-inch bottom cord. We're not going to get into energy heal trusses. If let's say, remember we've got the that exception in the prescriptive path that says, hey, let's say that you're required in your climate zone to have an R49, but I use what we're calling energy heal trusses, and I could make it tall enough so that I can get an R38, a full depth R38 over the top of all the exterior walls. That means the entire attic can be R38. You can only use that if you're doing prescriptive compliance. You cannot use that in REScheck. You can't use it in REScheck. So we're going to make the grand assumption that we're not using these energy heal trusses, and they're just a 3-inch. So why do we have? Why are they saying R13 cavity and R36 continuous? So what a lot of guys will do is they're saying that the bottom cord, 3.5 inches deep, is cavity, and everything that's blown in on top of that is continuous. There are times when compliance is so close that makes a difference, because clearly continuous insulation provides a better insulating value than cavity because it knocks down the thermal bypass. If you were to look at the health piece within the REScheck, it actually it's pretty black and white. There are many that say, no, it's all cavity. You've got many that do this exact thing. Do it down piece. So I wouldn't. I don't care. And a lot of energy guys that do this, ResNet guys and energy raters, will actually split this up because the thermal bypass now is what? It's just the webs. It's just the webs themselves. So it's not like a stud wall. So honestly, I don't have an issue with doing that. So what are we going to have? So we've got, I'm going to say R13 cavity, and then R36 continuous, and we need to know how many square feet that is. So what do we got? So I'm just going to do a square, oopsie, I'm going to do a square footage thing here. Oh, I didn't quite get to the point. Blessed. All right, so let's say I got a little over about 1,180 square feet. Anybody want to buy on that?
Sure.
Everybody saying sure? So if you actually did the math, it's not exactly that, but we're gonna say it's close, and this is what I mean by where each of us could do a different takeoff and have different numbers. All right, so we're going to say 1,180 square feet. Then we're just going to add up all the linear footage of our walls, yes? So what do we got for linear footage of wall? We got, we'll start with 23 plus 30 plus 50 plus 18 plus 27 plus 12. So we had 160 linear feet. Wall. And we're going to take the windows. No, you don't. Oh, very good point. Excellent point. If I didn't say that before, the software does that. That's why it's important. You're always doing gross area, always. Do not subtract the windows. The software does it. That's why it's important to make sure that the windows and the walls are connected correctly. So you always do gross, always gross area. So we're going to take, we got 160 linear foot of wall, and it says we have 9-foot ceiling. So it's going to be 160 times 9. It's going to be 160 times 10.
1,440.
Yeah, so we're actually going to take it times 10 because we have 9-foot ceilings, but it says here we've got 2x12 floor joists. So we would actually include the rim in that. And so instead of taking it times 9, we take it times 10.
So 1,600.
Exactly. So we would get our 1,600. That is correct. We'd get our 1,600 square feet. Then we've got windows, and so we'll do the square. We would just do the gross area on that. Let's see. So we've got how many windows we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that right?
Yeah.
We got 11 windows, and we did what? Oh, we did 3.5 by 6. 3.5 times 6 times 11. I get 231 square feet. Perfect.
Act.
Okay. And so we got what? U is 0.35, and we did a solar heat gain of a 0.40. Then we got doors. So we've got, what, 3. Looks like we've got 3 doors. So we're going to say those are all 21 times our 3 gives us a big 63. 4 doors. And we said that had a U value. They're less than 50% glass. So we said these are opaque assemblies. I'm going to say they're a 0.20. All right. Is there anything else we would need to include on this? Does anybody notice the difference that we need to deal with here? Anything else? So we got our ceiling, and we've got that. And so I'm going to page down here for just a second. So we have a difference here. Yeah, what this plan is because it's so poor, you'd have to do the square footage, but it's got a 2, because we only got 21 feet here, 29. And we got 27 and 23, so we have a 2-foot cantilever right here. Because the plan's so poor, you wouldn't know that unless you looked at it a million times like I have. We actually have about 24 square feet of R34. All right. Unless anybody sees anything we've missed, we'll go back and enter it. Okay. So we're going to add a ceiling. Let's hope it didn't. No, it didn't. Good. So you can see the little pop-ups that come up and says, what do you got? So all the different types. Here's that other. You've got all kinds of different pieces that they've got. So we're not going to say it's raised steel. We're just going to say it's good old flat ceiling or scissor truss. And so what is it going to say? Well, you'll notice the things on the right popped up. And so if we're doing our ceiling first, we said we were going to have 1,180 square feet. We said that we were going to have our 13 cavity. And we said we were having our 36 continuous. And we're going to hit apply. And boom. And we don't have any skylights or anything in there. If we were having skylights, we could add, and we'd add skylights. So let's do some walls. Okay, we're going to do a wall. Okay. Let's say that we never did say if it was 16 or 24, but let's say that the above grade walls were 2x4s. 2x4s. What's that? Did the plan say? Did the plan actually say 16 or 24?
Depends which.
Well, we'll say it was 24.
16.
Well, did it? Okay, we'll use 16. Perfect. Very good. So, what's going to be our gross area of wood framed walls at 16 inches on center? So, well, the first floor is easy. We have 1,600 square feet, yep. But because I'm not going to differentiate between the basement and the first floor, I'm going to say they're built the same. So we've got 168 square feet because I'm not going to use orientation. I'm not doing direction. I'm just framing everything in the same. So we'd have 1,768 square feet. And I'm just going to put it all in there. And I'm going to say it's all the same. We're going to say it was all R13. And it had no continuous insulation whatsoever. Apply. Wait for it to come up. Now, look at that. Now what do I want to add? Well, now that I've got a wall, I can start adding windows and doors. So now I'm adding windows and doors to my wall, right? So look, add to parent assembly. So that's critical. And what do we have? Well, I don't think it said, but I'm going to assume it was a vinyl frame window. It's going to be double pane, low E. And we had a gross area in the wood walls, okay, because we only had windows in wood walls and the above grade pieces of it. So we had 11, so we had 231 square feet, and it had a U factor of 0.35. Because, so why isn't it asking us for the solar heat gain coefficient? Because we picked climate zone 6. That's where Parker, Minnesota is, and there is no requirement for solar heat gain. All right, apply. Now, within that wall assembly, so I need to add doors. So here's our parent, and we actually had solid doors, yes, and those were in the upper wall, and so we had 63 square feet there, and we were saying that it was a 0.2. And do we have another door type? And the answer is yes, because we had a glass door in the basement in the wood wall at 21 square feet. And we said that was a 0.35. I'm just moving along here so I can get to the reports and you can see how this looks in the end. What else do we have? We also have, we got our ceilings. Yeah, so we've got, well, before, now you'll notice these two add buttons. So I've got one down here that's adding it to this wall, and that's my wood wall. Now I'm going to go up here, and what do I add? I'm going to add another wall. Okay, and actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to add, that's going to be part of my foundation. So I've got a basement wall. And so it's solid concrete masonry. So again, here's that little picture that shows up. We didn't note that, but we'll make some guesses here, what's kind of typical. We said we had 1,112 square feet, and it was going to be continuous because we did an R13 drape. We're going to make the grand assumption that it was an 8-foot tall wall, that it's going to be 7.5 feet below grade, and that the depth of insulation is 8 feet. Depth below grade usually, right from the top of the wall to grade, we're going to have at least 6 inches. So typically that's the case. So does that all look good? And if I made a mistake, we can come back and change it. Give it a minute. Okay, so what am I going to add to that? Windows. I'm going to add a window for sure. You bet.
And the door.
And actually the door we added. We added the door because that was in the wood wall assembly. And so we added the door already in our wood wall assemblies, even because I'm just cramming everything together, because you can. So, okay, so we did that in the lower floor, but that's good. That's good. We just happened to put them all together. We're actually going to say they put in a nice window. It was a vinyl frame, and it was double pane Louis, and the gross area for our basement windows was 64 square feet. 64. And we said, is that correct? I think it was 64. And a U value of 0.35. Very good. All right. Apply. So, have we gone and done it yet? No. In our foundation, we need to add a floor. And it is a slab ungrade, unheated. and it's the limit, it's the running length, which we said was 21 square feet, and we're going to say it's got nothing. We're going to say, I really don't want to insulate that. So we would leave these values as 0. But now the software knows that we have a basement with basement walls, and we've got 21 linear feet of slab on grade. So we're going to hit check compliance, and let's see what happens. Ooh. Really bad. It's because we got stuff we're doing, just to let you know, Parker's Prairie, Minnesota is climate zone 6. So we're going to really need to up this stuff if we're going to get anywhere near compliance. For instance, all the walls are going to be way more than this R13, yes? Yeah, so there was, let's see. I might have to hit, yeah. I'm going to hit save. It might take a minute or two. Even on a good day, it takes forever to save.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah, go ahead. You had a question?
We have a question in the chat, Gil, from Heather. Are we assuming this is a finished basement?
Oh, that's a really great question. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. The question is it inside or outside the building thermal envelope? It doesn't matter if it's finished or not. It truly doesn't. So we don't need to ask. It doesn't matter. It's just we're making the assumption that it is. Yeah, there's a checking list. So we'll just use this because it, even though it fails, we're not going to have time to go through. But that's a great question. It doesn't matter. I don't care if they're finishing it or not. Is it inside or outside of the thermal envelope? That could be a completely unfinished basement, the drape, and everything. That's the key. And so if you've got a builder that says, well, but we're not finishing it, well, yeah, so is it inside or outside your building thermal envelope? Tell me that. If it's not, then you're insulating the entire floor, okay? Putting your air barrier on your floor. So here's, when we look at the compliance tab here, this is where we've got a couple of different ones where this is where the designer can say, construction drawings demonstrate compliance, yes. And condition basement installed per manufacturer's instruct. Then they can type in a note that says, yeah, see sheet A2.2. They can actually give you a little bit of direction for that. Then we can come down here if we've got, so it says this one, we've got protective. Okay, what happens when the windows get changed to 0.32 versus a 0.26 in REScheck during, installed during construction and the product isn't passing for compliance path anymore. How do you handle that? Awesome question. Yeah, they've got some thinking to do. This is why it's critical that when REScheck is done, as a plans examiner, we're making certain that the plans match the U values, R values, continuous, cavity, all of that stuff is the same on the plans. I'm not getting bent out of shape about square foot here and there, but I'm telling you, they're in trouble. Let's say that they put in a 0.32, but the REScheck says 0.26. Well, guess what? They need to do another REScheck and show compliance with a 0.32. That's a problem. So they can't be doing that. That's a bad thing. That it is not good. Yeah, so they need to avoid doing that because, gosh, as soon as that happens, and that's going to be at rough. Hopefully we're catching that at rough inspection and not waiting until final. That we're checking those windows at a rough, and at which point then they've got a choice. They can at least at that point maybe put some more insulation in the attic, which helps a lot. REScheck and the energy stuff really likes insulation in the attic, but there are times where that isn't enough. If it happened to be a walkout, maybe they can dig up the foundation on the outside and put in insulation, and that might help them. But they have to pass. They can't just change something in the field and move on with life. So that's a good question. They've got problems if they're doing that. That's a problem. This is the one that deals with a protective covering is installed to protect the exterior insulation. They would click, hey, it's not applicable because guess what? I haven't done with anything, okay? They can go through, and wouldn't it be nice if they answered all these questions to see. But they could switch going to performance instead of changing things they want. Yeah, they could, absolutely. They could change their path. And so that's absolutely another option. That's, Shauna's saying here, absolutely you could. So let's say they give you a REScheck, they change the windows, and they can't, seem to pass based on the REScheck. Maybe we can pass on performance. Maybe we could pass on ERI. Certainly acceptable. And it could be that a 0.32 might happen to be the prescriptive method. Right? So they might be able to say, oh, well, yeah, but we're going to change from trading things off. We're actually going to put it in. So they're absolutely correct. They wouldn't have to stick with that. They could pick anything. And I've had that happen before. Usually they want to do performance, and for some reason they get bad results somewhere, and it doesn't pass on performance and actually passes on total UA. So the softwares that the HERS raters use will actually do the same thing that REScheck does and give you what they call a total UA or a UA compliance document, which would work too. So good point, Shauna. That's a good point. They don't have to use REScheck. They can use any other available. Absolutely. Okay, so we've done a few things here. Let's go ahead and let's hit report, or I might have to hit save first before I can see a report. That'll take a minute or two. So I won't, oh, good, it did it. So let's hit report. And, okay, I'm going to do all of it, and we're going to continue. I'm going to see everything, and I'm going to say, no, it's not final. And I just need, oh, there it is. And we're going to say open. All right, so hopefully we're seeing the report now. We'll make it big enough so folks can see it. So here, this is all within the software, so they can't manipulate this. Okay, so whatever it is we entered comes out in this report. I have yet to see anybody actually manipulate this PDF. There are ways to do it, believe me. But I have not seen anybody manipulate a PDF yet. So again, what we're doing here on review, I guess it was climate zone 7, so it was even worse. It's climate zone 7, and the winter fails miserably. But at this point, we would just kind of go back and start manipulating the numbers to see, and obviously, we're getting up to something that has to be continuous instead of R13. But I wanted to just get down to we had a pretty simple house here. So here's this report that you would get, and it's really nice that it starts to give you things that are important. And so when you start to look here, we're going to get to the tabs here. So you start to see these, high impact tiers, medium impact, and then 3 of these low impact. What we're trying to do, and this is through many studies that PNNL and Department of Energy and Shauna and I have been involved in, So what's the biggest bang for your buck? For those jurisdictions that find tough to check everything, wouldn't it be nice if we just hit the big top, the top 10, as we like to say? What are the biggies? And anything that you see in white here, those are the biggies. So construction drawings, right, for thermal envelope and any lighting and mechanical systems. Wouldn't that be great? I did a check mark here, remember, and it says, requirements will be met. And then, we can look like plans, places for you just to handwrite in there if you wish, or you could, pull it open the PDF and add verbiage in here if you wish. And these guys can use it in the field. Absolutely, you can use them in the field. Places to put in that we didn't do it. Places to put in what the BTU ratings or what the manual J said for heating and cooling, what the appliances are going to say. So we can kind of keep going down and see what's the biggies, what's the important stuff. Slab edge, conditioned basement, R value walls. You can put the R value in here for your plans and what the guys should be seeing in the field. Hopefully that helps them along with that. The conditioned basement pieces. This is that protective covering. Remember, we put our notes in here. This is where the notes will show up, and that's what the designer will put in, where the location is that in this particular manufacturer instruction. So it helps show and provide guidance to those that are doing the inspections and to those that are doing the review. Here we put in the fact that we're not having insulation on the outside, so we're not having to protect it. We don't have any ice melt stuff. We didn't get into that. But again, here, a lot of the white U values, glazing, area weighted, if they use the area weighted piece, which I don't see very often, but they could do that. That'd be another thing that they could do if they screw up the window U value. They could do an area weighted average. That might get them by. We got fenestration and big deals. I mean, how big is this right here? Air barrier and thermal barrier installed for manufacturer instruction. So that's, whatever you're using for air barriers, on the outside and on the inside. Sheetrock generally on the inside, or thermoply, or maybe sheets of foam and attic knee walls, things of that nature behind tubs and tubs and showers. But that's a big deal. Fenestration is labeled right there. It's a biggie. IC rated cans, wouldn't it be nice? That's kind of second on the list. You got insulated ductwork. Oh my goodness sakes! Even insulated ductworks in the attic. When it's in the attic and it's an R8, it can add a ton of air conditioning easily, even if they're insulated to that R8. So that's a big deal. They're in the attic or an unconditioned space, they need to be insulated because they're already a drain on the system. Sealing ductwork and things of that nature. So as I'm blathering through this stuff, if you've got any other questions, we're coming up on our 2 hours. Just go ahead and type them in or speak up because we're getting toward the end here. Again, we're getting down to, here's the HVAC piping. That would be like boilers and things of that nature. We're even saying that insulation stuff is number 2 on the list. Number 2 on the list is hot water pipes. We're supposed to have, at least an R3 on most hot water pipes, depending on how big they are. But it's still number 2 on the list. And gravity dampers, I take exception to that. You should have intakes and exhaust gravity dampers. Those are the backdraft dampers that are going to be on all of your exhaust fans and things of that nature. There's just flaps. That's not a big deal. You're generally looking at mass walls. We didn't have anything. Insulation is big right there. Installed for manufacturer's installation instructions. For those of you that know, when you have your raters doing these inspections, if they're doing the performance path, for instance, raters have 3 grades of insulation: grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. Grade 3 being really, really bad. They just nick you. They just give you a penalty because it's not doing its job. I can tell you right now, the manufacturers expect it to be grade 1. So if you haven't communicated that to your raters, because they're doing their job. They say they got a grade 3, and they're just saying, okay, well, that's not going to work so well. The instructions I gave to all the raters that were doing it in my jurisdiction at the time, the expectation of the jurisdiction was grade 1, period, end subject. Because you could see the OSB, you could have gaps in it for grade 3, and that's not the intent in any way, shape, or form. So we can go through this. It's just page and page and page, right? Here's the duct testing requirement, big time, right there, number 1, big time. Blower door, here's the blower door test. Okay, yeah, big, number 1. Attic access hatch. The idea that, you're going to have the insulation dams, as I call it, around there, so when you put the attic lifts, good. So you're very, very welcome doing the webinar. You bet. Piece of cake. Hopefully Shauna is better next week so she can do the concept. I think you don't have to get bored with me again. She does a great job. So again, we just worked through. So we've got any other questions? We're coming up right on 2 hours here. We got anything you need to say?
I've got a question for you. Are there any most common mistakes made when filling out REScheck?
You broke up there a little bit. Is there what kind of mistakes?
Any most common mistakes made when filling out REScheck?
Well, the most common mistake is that they're not in the construction plan. That's probably the biggest mistake, is that when I look at the construction plans, they're either not clear on what it is supposed to be installed, or another thing that I don't like is they'll say, see REScheck. No. 9 times out of 10, nobody knows what a REScheck is, right? It's got to be on the plans. I don't see square footages mucked up a lot. Typically, it's pretty rare when I find that they haven't included the second floor walls, for instance. I'm looking for big mistakes, not little mistakes. Slab edge insulation, many times they'll put in, the slab's insulated because it lets them pass. But when you look at the construction documents, they have absolutely no intention of insulating the slab. And so that probably is another biggie that I see on RESchecks. And Shauna says, I find that people put an R2 or something in continuous insulation, yes, even if they're not doing continuous because they are counting for assembly materials, but the software already does that. He's absolutely correct. And you'll see an R1 maybe or an R2 at times to the above grade walls. And they're like, well, there's no continuous insulation. And then they come back with something like, well, the siding has an R value and my OSB and the drywall. Well, sure it does. And that's that example we looked at earlier when you can actually calculate your other, right? Your other option. And Heather put in here, they enter the other in the description. Yes. Well, guess what? You can't do other. You can't say other and not give me your calculation, because all the software is going to do is going to say, oh, you've entered other. So tell me what your U value is for that assembly. That's all the software is going to ask. Okay? So you really need to they need to give you this is how I came up with this U value. This is what I used for my air film. This is what I used for my siding. This is what I used, so you can see the math. So that's very good. That's another one that they do. They say use other, put in what they want, so they pass. And then they can't give you their counts. They can't figure it out. Cool. What else? Erica, you got anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for hanging in there today with the technical issues. Gil and I will stay on if anyone has any additional questions. But other than that, everyone have a good weekend and happy Friday.
Yes.
And thanks again, Gil. This was a great presentation. Even though we had some pauses and whatnot in there, I think it worked out in the end.
Well, I was just glad I was able to actually go online and show the software. I mean, that was half the fun.
Right.